Your Excellency, President Hamid Karzai, it's a privilege and a rare pleasure to extend to Your Excellency and the high Afghan dignitaries accompanying Your Excellency the most cordial and warm welcome. Mr. President, you have done us a great honor by so graciously accepting our invitation to deliver the Observer Research Foundation's third H.E.Mr. Memorial Lecture. Sir, India holds your country and you personally in high respect and deep affection. For us in the Observer Research Foundation, this occasion will remain a glowing memory for decades to come. Your Excellency, Mr. Minister, we are delighted to welcome you. My colleagues in the Foundation and our trustees and associates are obliged to you, sir, for agreeing to adorn the chair on this signal of this occasion of signal importance. Respected ministers, honorable members of Parliament, ladies and gentlemen, I extend to each one of you ORF's Dussehra greetings and a most cordial welcome. Mrs. Mishra's presence among us lends poignancy to the occasion as we recall the memory of H.E.Mr. Mishra, the Observer Research Foundation's founding chairman. His vision of ORF as a world-class, independent, public policy think tank continues to be our abiding inspiration. Mishra ji was a multi-dimensional man, a journalist in constant search for the truth, a respected editor, a parliamentarian of note, an eclectic thinker, an author of distinction, and a loyal friend. The last decade and a half of his life was dedicated to the ORF, its growth, and its future success. Mr. President, our research work covers several geographic areas of the world and global developments in issues of economy, energy, international relations, and security. But our central focus is on our neighbors in Asia, and in particular on the stability, peace, and progress of member countries of SAARC. That is why the first 8 memorial lectures are scheduled to be delivered by leaders and statesmen of South Asian countries. In South Asia, Mr. President, your beautiful country and its heroic people engage our maximum attention and interest, not only because of the trials and tribulations they have suffered in recent decades, but also and especially because Indo-Afghan bonds go back to the dawn of human history. India, therefore, is bound in friendship to offer all cooperation and help to Afghanistan that Afghanistan may ask of it in times of need. One unchanging lesson from ORF's study of Afghanistan's history is that no foreign invader or intruder ever has succeeded in imposing its will on the valiant and freedom-loving Afghan people. Afghanistan's unity and peace, its independence and integrity are indispensable to the stability, peace and progress of the vast regions of Central Asia, South Asia and the Persian Gulf. Therefore, Afghanistan deserves the world's respect for its great past, sympathetic understanding of and solicitude for its present predicaments, and the world's cooperation for its even greater future. The South dream, Your Excellency, will achieve fulfillment only if each country of the region fully and faithfully respects the independence and integrity of every other member country. Mr. President, your visit to Delhi.
Mr. Rasgotra, Mr. Besson, Mr. Joshi, honorable ministers, parliamentarians, ambassadors, and again, ladies and gentlemen, it's a very particular honor for me that I've been considered to speak today before this distinguished audience, and to be only the third speaker, if I understood it correctly, at the Observers Research Foundation. Looking at the audience, indeed is a very distinguished body of opinion making. When Mr. Rasgotra referred to Afghanistan and India as two countries or peoples linked to one another from the dawn of history of mankind. Indeed, it is a story of that nature, and one that has captured the imagination of people around the world as well. With many ups and downs and sufferings and tragedies and happy stories in between. I'm not going to go way back into the past today. I will begin from 1977-78, or more precisely 79, with the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, and the consequences that that invasion brought, not only to Afghanistan, but to the wider region. And a brief description of Afghanistan at the time will lead us to where we are today. Afghanistan was a poor, mostly illiterate, Central South Asian country. Central South Asian country with a Muslim people, deeply believing Muslim people, with quite good minorities of Hindus and Sikhs, and some Jews living in that country, where the society was deeply believing and Muslim, where the society at the same time was traditional and moderate, where the society lived as the tradition in that part of Afghanistan and in parts of India is, in a panchayat type of system, where there was an egalitarian culture, where the khans and the lords and the maliks were not much above the farmers and those that helped them or served them when they sat around the dinner table or dinner cloth, as we call dastarkhan. I'm sure you call it the same in India, and other occasions, where education was on the rise, where the society was beginning to be more affluent and more educated, where a civil service was taking shape, where governance was taking the modern shape as we have now experienced in the past 2 or 3 centuries in the rest of the world. In this environment, the Soviet Union came to Afghanistan, and with the invasion of the Soviet Union, the Afghan people rose in resistance to that foreign occupation and to the imposition of communism as a way of life on the Afghan people. The reaction to that was the jihad of the Afghan people, the resistance of the Afghan people, as the French called it at that time, and also equally an imposition in the name of the jihad of the Afghan people by other foreign forces of religious radicalism on the Afghan people. So Afghanistan was confronted by two opposing political trends, one using communism as a tool, the other using and promoting religious radicalism as a tool, one using that tool to defeat the so-called non-communists, and the other using the tool to defeat the so-called communists. In this tussle, Afghanistan suffered heavily. In this war, which was a war of liberation for the Afghan people, but a war of purposes other than that for countries in the region and the West and the Soviet Union. We all know the story till 2001 and beyond. With the arrival of the Taliban and with September 11, the West woke up, or perhaps the right word would be began to see their interests more present and eminently of danger to them in Afghanistan. They came to Afghanistan, and as we saw, the West, led by the United States of America and NATO, succeeded in removing the Taliban and Al-Qaeda and their foreign backers within a month and a half. I was personally present there in Afghanistan at that time and witness to what happened, and that's of extreme importance to the audience today. The Taliban and the Al-Qaeda and their foreign backers in Afghanistan were not defeated because only of the arrival of the NATO and American forces. No. They were defeated because of a deep desire of the Afghan people to free themselves. Because of a deep desire of the Afghan people for liberation. When the Taliban and the Al-Qaeda and their backers were removed from Afghanistan within a month and a half, it was when there was no American forces on our side. There were only perhaps 500 of them altogether. And definitely not in the southern parts of Afghanistan where the Al-Qaeda and the Taliban had strong presence. It was the community that rose against them, that pushed them away, and they left. Subsequent to that, from 2001, Afghanistan began to re-emerge as a country for all Afghans. While before that, whoever was the government claimed total ownership of Afghanistan. If it was the communists, they said all is ours. If it was the Mujahideen parties who came, they fought among themselves and brought ruin to themselves and to the country. And the Taliban, of course, was totally exclusionists. The Afghanistan of today is the Afghanistan in which all Afghans find their place. It's a place for all Afghans. So that is the greatest achievement of the past decade of work. And in this decade, we began not only to make Afghanistan once again a home for all Afghans, but also to bring back to Afghanistan the repair of the destruction of the two previous decades. Bring back the civil service, bring back an economic recovery, bring back the build-up of the institutions, bring back democracy, bring the constitution, and most important of all, the return of women to the Afghan polity and workplace, and education. I will come back to India in this connection later on, but before I go further, I would like to once again make a note of thanks to the people of India for having participated in every aspect of this rebuilding of our country. In every aspect, from democracy, institution building, to education, to highways, to transmission lines for power generation for electricity, to the thousands of scholarships, to the very well spent nearly $2 billion of assistance in our country. So thank you very much, and I will return to the subject later on. This is what we achieved. But this achievement in Afghanistan came in spite of all the obstacles and odds. The war machinery against Afghanistan, terrorism, extremism did not stop. Those who came from the rest of the world to help us, their financial contributions mattered greatly. But also their presence in Afghanistan brought the unintended consequences of parallel structures, private security firms, and all other activities that caused an impediment to the growth of the Afghan state. So Afghanistan has grown to where it is today, where we have nearly 70,000 students in our universities, nearly 7.5 million of our children in schools, and a massively free press where you can't imagine in India, because India is too focused on its own as far as the media is concerned. You don't look beyond India. When you look beyond India into the region, the Afghan press is perhaps as vibrant, if not as entrenched in culture of media freedom as India is. But it is as vibrant and as abusive of the government as yours. This is a significant achievement, and we will continue with it, and I will come to the vision part of it later on. In this whole exercise for the rebuilding of Afghanistan, as I referred to in my remarks earlier, India, as it was a contributor in the past, became even more of a significant contributor in the past 10 years. It never said no to any of Afghanistan's requests. It fulfilled. When I asked the Prime Minister, Dr. Manmohan Singh, for more scholarships, he said yes. When I asked the Prime Minister, Mr. Atal Bihari Vajpayee before him, for roads, he said yes. The two governments that I've seen since my presidency in Afghanistan have given us all that we wanted. And yesterday, we signed a strategic partnership agreement. It is nothing new, by the way. We have been engaged in strategic partnership cooperation for the last many years. When you give us 2,000 scholarships, that's strategic. That's extremely strategic. When you train our youth and your universities, that's strategic. When you build a brand new road from the southwest of Afghanistan to west of Afghanistan, the Zaranj-Dilaram road, that brings a massive change to trade and transit and the livelihood of people, that's strategic. When you build the transmission lines from northern Afghanistan to the capital of the country and beyond, that is strategic. When you build the parliament of the country, that's strategic. When you give us $2.5 billion, that's strategic. So yesterday we put in words and signed the strategic cooperation that we've had, and this will now encompass security, capacity building, economic activity further in the mineral capacity building and exploration, and in the oil and gas and all other fields. So taking this occasion, thank you very much, India, for what you have done for us, and surely the Afghans will not only not forget this, but will remain grateful forever for what India has done for us today, and for this very important step that we took to formalize this relationship yesterday. As I mentioned earlier, Afghanistan's rebuilding effort concentrated on all the aspects of our life. And I mentioned briefly the obstacles that we faced. In order to give you a picture of these obstacles in a little more detail, and then to take us a step further into the peace building efforts and to the transition, I'd like to tell you that in the past 10 years, as we were building schools, the terrorists were coming and burning our schools. As we were building the traditional society of Afghanistan, bringing back life to the political culture of the country, the terrorists and those from outside were killing our leaders. National leaders, to community leaders, to local leaders. As we were building mosques and Islamic institutions, our ulama were being killed and maimed and wounded. As we were training teachers, our teachers were being killed and intimidated. As we were building health institutions, doctors were killed and clinics destroyed. Hundreds of community leaders have been killed. Thousands of police and soldiers have been killed. Thousands of our civilians have lost life to various forms of violence. Hundreds of schools were shut down or destroyed. The roads that we built were damaged again by violence and terrorism. So where Afghanistan stands today, a country where in 2001, in 2002 rather, where we had an income per capita of $150, today we stand at $600. Where we had a GDP of nearly $3 billion, today we stand at perhaps close to $18 billion, about $17 billion. Where we had a foreign reserve of a mere $180 to $200 million, we stand nearly $6 billion today. Where we had no schools in spite of the violence, we have thousands of schools. Where we have no advancement in any other parts of the country or areas of development, Afghanistan stands good and solid. Where Afghanistan was totally taken by polio and malaria and mother and child mortality, Afghanistan has done magnificently well in that. Afghanistan has received the appreciation of the United Nations in its fight against polio and the mother and child mortality rates, who have come down considerably. But where Afghanistan has not succeeded is to bring security to its people. Where Afghanistan has not succeeded is to bring peace to its people. Where the international community, NATO and the United States have failed as well as in bringing peace and stability to the country. And what is the reason for that? Is the most important question for us all. Because it's not only Afghanistan that suffers. Afghanistan suffers a lot more. But so does India in the hands of terrorism. So does Pakistan in the hands of terrorism. Pakistan suffers more today than we do in Afghanistan. Much more. Just yesterday there were 13 people killed in Quetta in some form of sectarian killing. In the beginning, from 2002 to 2005 and 6, I was highly vocal in condemning violent activities as we felt was coming from across the border into Afghanistan. But when I saw that Pakistan too was beginning to suffer in a very serious way from extremism and radicalism and the consequences of that in terms of violence and the loss of life for the people of Pakistan, I began to change my attitude and my rhetoric. And since then, from 2005 and 6, ladies and gentlemen, no government in Afghanistan, since the creation of Pakistan 64 years ago, how many years ago, has engaged as extensively and with strong focus as I and my government have done, by launching a peace process with the Taliban and by engaging directly and very sincerely and very brotherly with our brothers in Pakistan. We have not, unfortunately, yet received the result that we want. What we wished has not yet been fulfilled. In the peace process with the Taliban, a messenger who came in the name of peace killed Professor Burhanuddin Rabbani, a suicide bomber. Came to bring us a message of peace, and he was killed. Professor Rabbani was killed by the same messenger of peace. Therefore, we have now decided to not talk to the Taliban because we don't know their address. We don't know where to find them. And when we find them, we will talk to them. Therefore, we have decided to talk to our brothers, our neighbors in Pakistan. In all sincerity, desirous of results, we will continue to work with our brothers in Pakistan. In this relationship, as we began years ago, has unfortunately not given us the result that we want. So the peace process, as it stands today, will be focused more towards in relations between countries rather than in us seeking a dialogue with an organization or a body of individuals that we cannot find. In the distress of ours for security in Afghanistan, Afghanistan has not only engaged in the most brotherly terms, in the most friendly terms, relations with our friends and brothers in Pakistan, but also with Iran, also with our other neighbors, which we'll continue to do. In the same exercise in bringing stability and strength to Afghanistan, as we signed yesterday an agreement with India for strategic partnership, Afghanistan is also in negotiations with the United States of America. Afghanistan has already signed one with NATO, and Afghanistan is looking at an agreement with the European Union. So Afghanistan can provide for itself the means of stability and the means of capacity building by arrangements with the international community in the neighborhood of Afghanistan and beyond the neighborhood of Afghanistan. And in this connection, the most important development that is of relevance not only to Afghanistan but the region is the transfer of authority from the international community to the Afghan forces, particularly from NATO to the Afghan forces. We began this transfer of authority last July, the first tranche of it in 7 Afghan cities and provinces. The next tranche is to begin in the month of October, and I'll be announcing it soon after my return to Kabul, which will continue to be implemented towards the third tranche and the final one by 2014, which by the way we were trying to cut short and make it take place by 2013. This means that by 2013 or maximum by 2014, Afghanistan will be entirely responsible for its own security. Afghanistan will be entirely responsible for the protection of its borders. Afghanistan will be entirely delivering services and all other governmental and state functions to its people. Afghanistan will be looking after its affairs, in short, entirely on its own, in cooperation and collaboration with countries like India, Europe, the United States, Saudi Arabia, Japan, Russia, China, of course, all our other neighbors. And this is a process that I hope India and all our other neighbors of ours will support and back as we move forward. Transition and the implementation of transition of authority to Afghanistan will bring us, rather in a dramatic way, head to head with what it is that we aspire for the region. Can Afghanistan, can India, can Pakistan, especially these 3 countries, and our other neighbors continue life as it is today? can we feel threatened as we move to the future? Can we live in the same environment of insecurity and fear as we do today? I was earlier talking with Excellency the Vice President, Mr. Ansari, and I told him, can you tell me how many children in India, in Delhi, know about flares that are fired from helicopters and planes as they pass by? How many children in India or in the rest of the world would be playing the suicider game and the other person's game, who are trying to protect themselves? How many children in the world would be knowing the name of Chinooks and Black Hawk helicopters? The children of Afghanistan know, and in Pakistan too. How many children in the world, do we have any child in the world that will play like we saw recently in a video in Pakistan where one child becomes a suicide bomber and the others are the victims and they play this game? This is a tragic scene. Extremely abusive of humanity. Extremely abusive of humanity. Where our 4-year-old boys talk of suicide bombs. I've heard my own son many times. When I come home, he says, Daddy, did you hear the suicide bomber? And I try to change the subject, but he won't give up. He'll keep asking. Is this the region that we want to live in? Definitely not. So if we don't want to live in a region filled with violence, anger, aggression, what is it that we should do? As I mentioned earlier, we have done our best, the best that it is humanly possible with our neighbors. And will continue to do the best that is possible with our neighbors. But this region, with this massive potential of growth, and it is being seen, as we see it in India, fortunately, this massive growth that you have, as we see it in China, has a great story of success visible to the whole world. And yet at the same time, this region has the most negative trends affecting us as well. On the one hand, there is massive potential of progress and activity towards a better living. And on the other hand, there is so much violence, so much aggression, so much extremism coming to us. If this trend continues as it is, years from today, not only we will be faced with increased threat in this development, but we will have, as we do have today, water shortages, shortages of space and land, shortages of vegetation and forests, and all other difficulties that will confront us in a very daring and challenging manner. I don't think, ladies and gentlemen, that we can afford, as human societies, by the standards of these so-called sophisticated war seekers. I don't think we can afford to live as human societies in this environment of hatred and lack of trust. For Afghanistan, we have no option but to be the best of brothers and friends with our neighbors, to be a transit route, to be the hub of commercial activity for this region, and to have freedom of movement. And for this reason, there is no way that we cannot copy a European model of living side by side in peace and prosperity. Europeans have had bigger conflicts than we have had in the histories of our countries. My vision for this region is one in which there are no borders or lax borders. My vision for this region is where our youth's energy is released and spent for the well-being of the future generations. My vision for this region is of more prosperity and of peace. My vision for this region is where the grandchildren of ours will not be talking of suicide bombs. They will not know suicide bombs, but they'll be talking of anything else. And that vision will not come unless we all recognize that we need bold, visionary steps and leadership. In the past 10 years, I've been witness to efforts by India and Pakistan. One that began by Prime Minister Bihari Vajpayee and Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif. The other that began by Prime Minister Manmohan Singh and Mr. Gilani. I appreciate both efforts. And as I talk to them, Nawaz Sharif, Mr. Vajpayee, Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, Mr. Gilani, are as much desirous of peace as any one of us in this room and beyond. I hope the polities as a whole can get together and go beyond the established tendencies. And Afghanistan will spend no stone unturned. Afghanistan will not fall short of any measure that will bring us that. So, Afghanistan's grapes can reach you not on a plane, on an Aviation 76 or something like that, but in a lorry, in a truck from Kabul to Delhi. As delicious and fresh as they are in Kabul or in Kandahar or in Jalalabad. So we can have eventually the vision of Dr. Manmohan Singh, where we can have breakfast in Amritsar, lunch in Lahore, dinner in Kabul, and perhaps the next breakfast in Tehran. This is the vision that I have, and this is surely the vision that the millions and millions and millions of inhabitants of this region have. I will continue to work in tremendous honesty and brotherhood with our brothers in Pakistan. And the signing of the strategic partnership yesterday with India, I must emphasize and re-emphasize, is not directed against any country. It's not directed against any other entity. This is for Afghanistan to benefit from the strength of India. India, fortunately, has the strength to help us. This is for Afghanistan to use the possibilities that India has and offers to make our life better, to educate our children, to train our police, to train our army, to train our physicians, to train our lab technicians. The strategic partnership that we have is to support Afghanistan develop. Is what this region has. Ladies and gentlemen, if you look closer, this region is, in terms of its people, more assembled, more united, more culturally together than any other region. Do you have in Russia a great German poet? No. Do you have that, Dr. Spanta? No. Do we have in Italy a great French poet? No. But we have in India Bedel, a great Persian poet. But we have in Pakistan Iqbal, a great Persian and Urdu poet. Do you have anywhere in the world where in a distance of thousands of kilometers, someone like Tagore would be writing about the life of a merchant in the other country of that region? No, but Tagore has written Kabuliwala. Do you have in any other part of the world a singer like Lata Mangeshkar ji who would listen to Mehdi Hasan? Or Mehdi Hasan who would listen to Bhim Singh Joshi? Or Khushal Khan Khattak who would speak of the beauty of India? Or Ghalib who would be read by all of us? For the shores of the Arabian Sea to the other end of this continent. Ask any Afghan, they will tell you about Shah Rukh Khan. Ask any Afghan, they will talk about Shami Kapurji, the late Shami Kapur. Ask any Pakistani, they would love the Indian song. Ask any Indian, they would love Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan. This is the foundation that we have. And this is the foundation upon which I hope, with tremendous aspirations, that we can build towards a future where we can be not only peaceful, but very prosperous countries, prosperous people, where I can, as a retired citizen of Afghanistan, also be a retired citizen of South Asia. That is my dream, and thank you very much. Thank you very much. Please. I'll leave this question time. Rather happy year.
The President has too much time, but he has graciously agreed to take 3-4 questions. Anybody from the floor? No question.
There is a question there, that end.
Yeah.
And there was a lady there, there was another gentleman. Oh,
there's one there, sir. Yes, sir.
President Karzai, in the strategic partnership signed yesterday, my name is James Rupert. I'm with Bloomberg News.
Bloomberg, most welcome, sir.
What kind of specifically security cooperation between Afghanistan and India is envisioned in the partnership that you signed yesterday? And for example, is there planning, preparation, discussion of, for example, Indian training for the ANA, for Afghan police? I ask this question simply because, of course, we know that this would be this would raise concerns in Pakistan, and so as a matter of sort of judging where we're moving in terms of regional tensions, it's an interesting question to ask.
Sir, you must have heard me speak in Pakistan, and also you must have heard me speak in India on other occasions. When I'm asked about Pakistan and India, I say Pakistan is a twin brother. India is a great friend. The agreement that we signed yesterday with our friend will not affect our brother. This is to strengthen Afghanistan. This is to strengthen a brother of Pakistan. To train our police for us, to train our army for us, to train thousands of Afghan youth who are right now studying in India, to give us the ability to provide for the health of our people in our own country. And if Pakistan and other neighbors of us want to offer the same, we have taken it, will be let's take it. So let's be emphatic here that neither India nor Afghanistan intends this to be beyond the two countries. This is between us and for the strengthening and promotion of the Afghan well-being. And I believe it will be made public. It will be made public, yes? It will be made public so you can all look at it and see that there's nothing that should worry any one of us. The documents, I mean. Already made public? Yes. Well, I'm far behind the media.
Yes, sir. Yeah. Please introduce yourself. Microphone there.
Have a meeting of the Loya Jirga to, figure out what next, because you have not been successful in holding any negotiations with the Taliban. So when are you planning to hold the next session of the Loya Jirga, and do you have any time frame for that? Thanks.
Well, the Loya Jirga was originally planned to discuss our strategic partnership with the United States. With the recent unfortunate developments in Afghanistan, as we suspended for now, our negotiations or efforts for negotiations with the Taliban, this whole new environment will be also put before the Loya Jirga, so we can have the opinion and also the instruction of the Afghan people on how we should proceed further.
Dr. Radha Kumar, your CPC has been to your country several times.
Yes.
That's the great research organization.
Right.
I'm Radha Kumar with the Delhi Policy Group. You spoke about your policy now having taken a little turn towards talking to the Pakistan government about how to further a peace and reconciliation process. I wondered if you could tell us a little more about what your expectations of that dialogue would be. And I had a little anecdote for you.
Please.
We ran a student exchange program for a couple of years, in which we brought Afghan, Indian and Pakistani students together.
Pakistanis too, very good.
And they actually had the pleasure of doing what neither yourself nor our Prime Minister have been able to do. They had breakfast in Kabul, lunch in Delhi, and dinner in Lahore.
So it has been done. So it has been done already. Well, I always believe that governments are rightly far behind the people. And that is the thing. On the question of talking directly with Pakistan, ma'am, Pakistan is suffering from exactly the same menace as we are in Afghanistan, and as you are, in your case, more fortunately on occasions. So it's relevant that the two countries, Pakistan and Afghanistan, sit together and find out as to what is the reason, what is causing it, or who is causing it, and why. And if we could find ways of addressing it together. This is in friendship and brotherhood with Pakistan, and that's how we will pursue the matter with them, so we can find a way out of this unfortunate current environment. जी जी शुक्रिया जी.
एक बात आपसे पूछना चाहता हूँ. What India has done is very historic in the sense it has provided you with a lot of strategic freedom by building a road on the Iranian side, Trans-Dalaram Road. Do you really have any practical difficulties in using that road if we have explorations in Hajigak and other places, and our companies are involved? I again congratulate you for this kind of agreement. what practical problems are there to use the Iranian road, the Iranian
Well, we have a transit agreement with Iran, and Iran is a friendly country with India and a brother and great friend with Afghanistan. Chabahar is not, I believe, yet fully developed to take on the bulk of the possibilities that India and Afghanistan have between the two countries. But we will use whatever potential there is that we can use to better trade and transit between us. Thank you.
So I have a few questions here.
Right. You will have a chance. You will have a chance.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. I want to carry forward the question put by Professor Radha Kumar. You said that you would be directly talking to Pakistan. Firstly, you've been talking to Pakistan earlier also, quite intensively, and you now said that you would not be talking to the Taliban but to Pakistan. Particularly in the context of statements from you and from other high authorities in Afghanistan in the last few years, that your perception and your understanding and the assessment of your intelligence agencies is that Pakistan was somehow involved in the attack on Professor Rabbani and his killing. Now, I can understand there have been, so how do you hope to take the dialogue forward so as to achieve the result, which is that Pakistan should totally disengage itself from activities of the kind which you suspect have been responsible for some of these troubles, and your cooperation goes forward?
Well, sir, we're not talking to the Taliban because the messenger that came in the name of the Taliban wasn't a messenger from the Taliban. It was a suicide bomber that killed President Rabbani. And we will wait till the Taliban have an address that we can go to and a name that we can identify as a negotiator to talk to. In the meantime, as I mentioned earlier, our brothers in Pakistan and Afghanistan are suffering the same violence, the same extremism. So it's only more logical that the two countries who are bearing the burden of all that violence sit down and talk and sort out the difficulties and clarify the dark areas.
Yes, young man.
So, this is Arup from Reuters. Just one question. Apart from what you said now, what other conditions would you have if you had to resume dialogue with the Taliban?
Well, first we have to find them and then put conditions before them.
Yeah, but what would be those few conditions, sir? If you could.
We have outlined those conditions already last year when the Afghan peace jirga was held, where 1,600 people from across the country came and authorized the government to talk to the Taliban with conditions that they respect the Afghan constitution, the gains that Afghanistan has made, the freedom of women in our society, and all other aspects of our achievements. That the fundamental, of course, there is respecting and accepting the Afghan constitution and laying down arms. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, sir.
That's the last question.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Very nice of you. Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Minister, may I request you, sir, to let me move on.
Your Excellency, President Karzai, Ambassador Rasgotra, distinguished trustees, I think it is a distinct pleasure to be present here while the President of Afghanistan, President Hamid Karzai, was delivering the H.E.Mr. Memorial Lecture. Mr. President, we in India are humbled by your affection both for our country and to our people. Your appraisal and appreciation of the constructive role played by India in reconstruction and development that is fast taking place in Afghanistan. It is indeed our privilege to be Afghanistan's partner in peace and development. At the outset, I would like to once again convey our deepest condolences on the brutal assassination of your own brother, Ahmad Wali Karzai, and President Rabbani. Mr. President, we vividly remember and recall the visit that President Rabbani made to India just a couple of months back on my invitation. It has always been a pleasure talking to a messenger of goodwill, an ambassador of goodwill. And indeed, he fell to the attack of a suicide bomber. Let me assure you, as the Prime Minister assured you last night, that India's friendship to Afghanistan is consistent with its notion that has been very eloquently indicated by Prime Minister, articulated by Prime Minister when he addressed the Afghan Parliament during the course of his visit to your country. Many of, and I quote, many of Afghanistan's priorities are also our priorities. Many of your problems are also our problems. We fully support the vision of a secure, prosperous, and democratic future for Afghanistan, unquote. This confidence and commitment has been fully reflected in the landmark bilateral agreement on strategic partnership concluded yesterday between our two governments. We are clear in our minds that it is for the people and government of Afghanistan to take decisions about the future of their great nation without any outside prescription or interference. We, as always, would be happy to be guided by your choices and your decisions and your comfort level. Afghanistan is at a crucial phase in its history. Quite apart from being a victim of terrorism and targeted assassinations, it also is bracing for drawdown of NATO forces by the end of 2014. Therefore, the twin challenges of national security institutions in tandem with stepping up the pace of
persistent attacks on Indian interests, engineered by forces inimical to India-Afghan friendship, we remain steadfast in our commitment to assist the valiant people of Afghanistan in their endeavor to build a peaceful, democratic, and pluralistic Afghanistan, as well as to enhance socio-economic ties with its neighborhood. Afghanistan's entry into the South Asian Association of Regional Cooperation in 2005 was a key step in enhancing the regional synergies. And that was the principal factor for my participation in the new Silk Road Ministerial meeting held last month in New York to underline India's support for this very constructive initiative towards positioning Afghanistan as an economic hub in the region. India will also actively participate in the forthcoming international conferences on Afghanistan, both in Istanbul and in Bonn. At the same time, it is essential that global efforts be renewed with greater vigor to suitably strengthen the capacity of Afghanistan's own institutions, including its national security forces, to enhance peace, stability in the country. In conclusion, I would like to once again profusely thank you, Mr. President, for so eloquently delivering the third H.E.Mr. Memorial Lecture today. And Ambassador Rasgotra, let me commend the efforts of the Observer Research Foundation for having such interactions with leading statesmen of the world, so that your organization serves as a very important bridge between international statesmen and the enlightened people of this country. Thank you so much.
Mr. Joshi, we offer thanks to the National Your Excellency, President Hamid Karzai, Honorable Minister, Mr. Krishna, Ambassador Rasgotra, Mr. Basim, and distinguished members of this audience. Let me first of all speak not on behalf of myself or of the Observer Research Foundation, but on behalf of this audience. Excellency, you gave a very wide-ranging speech covering, I think, the needs, aspirations of this entire region. And above all, somewhere deep, you struck a very mellow chord, which I think will continue to resonate in the ears of everyone, long after your visit has ended and for a long time to come. Because, Excellency, I think you spoke from your heart. And that is what really has lent this third R.K. Memorial Mishra lecture a gravity which will make it one of the most memorable lectures for many years to come. Thank you, sir. I thank the members of the Afghanistan delegation who've been here in such large numbers to cement this friendship between India and Afghanistan. I thank the Honorable Minister for revalidating, asserting this association, this great friendship between the countries.
If I start thanking a number of people who've helped us stitch this event together, it'll take me a long time, you'll all miss lunch. But my special thanks are due to Dr. Karzai, the ambassador, who helped us put this whole thing together. I thank my friends in the media who've been here in large numbers to cover this event. And lastly, my special thanks to the management of H.E.Mr for making these excellent arrangements where everything went like clockwork. Thank you all, and please join us for lunch.